Hello, my name is Reddy and welcome to my session about ANOVA. So today we are going to deal about analysis of variance. Regarding the subject of one way between subjects analysis of variance. So let's deep dive into the next part. So first we are going to see why we require ANOVA. So when we want to compare two means, we can always use a t-test. So it is a well-known analysis test to find compare between the two means. We can always use t-test. So why we need ANOVA? So the t-test but the t-test has limitations. So what are those limitations? So it can only be used only with one predictor or independent variable. So the t-test can only be used with one predictor or independent variable. And also you can compare only two groups in a t-test. So often we would like to compare three or more groups. So when we require comparison between more groups, the t-test becomes complex since we have to compare two tests and keep on testing the two tests and two tests so that it becomes a difficult process. So, and next, what do you mean by ANOVA? So ANOVA is nothing but analysis of variance, as the abbreviation says. And what does is that analysis analyzes the variance of groups to assess differences in between groups. So it is a process of to assess differences in means between groups. So to assess differences in means between the groups. It is an extension of regression or GLM model. So general linear model. So the general linear model is a special form regression. So in reality, everything we do from hypothesis testing, from G-test to T-test to correlation and to ANOVA is regression. So we can say that ANOVA is an extension of regression or general linear model. So let's take an example and explain more about the ANOVA. So let's take an example where we have different participants, or we can say the consumers who drink on a daily basis of these three drinks. So what are these three? Water, mango juice, and coffee. So we are going to find out whether the type of juice affects their reaction time or not. So we will take consider three drinks: water, mango juice, and coffee. As the side picture says, if the variation is more in the group within than between the groups, it does not affect. So as you can see, the variance of the between the values is much within the group, not between the groups. So we can say that here in this case we can say that the drink does not affect the reaction time. So uh, um, we can take another example. In this case, there is not much variance within the group, but there is much variance in between the groups. So there is a variance between the groups, not much variance within the group. So we can say that in this case, the drink affects the reaction time. So there is not much variance in each group, but there is variance between the groups. So to find the process of variance is like we have to figure out the variance between the groups and variance within the groups. So to calculate the ratio of the f value will be between the groups by within the groups. The ratio between the groups by within the groups. The larger the ratio, the more likely it is that the groups have different means. So we reject null hypothesis. So we can say we can as from this picture we can see that the uh, result of ANOVA shows f value is 4.27, so probability is 0.04. So how can we calculate the degrees of freedom f values? So we can say as the formula as f of b comma w, where b is the degrees of freedom for variance between the groups and w is the degrees of freedom for variance within the groups. So I can go and say again, b is the degrees of freedom for variance between the groups and w is the degrees of freedom for variance within the groups. So now b, to calculate the b value, we can use the formula number of groups minus 1, and to calculate the w value we can use the formula total number of observations minus number of groups. So not as we can see, as we have considered in the analysis, we have taken more than two groups, like we have taken water, mango juice and coffee, which are three different drinks. So and also what we can do is that we can take more additional factors that affect these groups. So as in the factors, like in this case we have taken is like during the day what the reaction values will be, and during the night what the reaction values will be to these drinks. So we can add as factors affecting to these groups also. So we can use ANOVA to these type of analysis. So we are going to discuss much deep into the ANOVA. So generally what we say is the mean values obtained from different groups with different conditions are frequently compared in clinical studies. For example, two mean bond strengths between tooth surface and resin cement may be compared using the parametric student t-test when independent groups are subjected to the comparison under the assumptions of normal distribution and equal variances. So, for in this example, we have taken the tooth surface and resin cement can be compared with using the parametric student's t-test. So when using the t-test, when the independent groups are subjected to the comparison under the assumptions of normal distribution and equal variance, or we can say standard deviation. In a condition of unequal variance, we may apply the Wells t-test as an adaptation of t-test. So in the condition of unequal variance where there is a standard deviation varies, the we may apply the Wells t-test as an adaptation of the present t-test. So as the nature and the specific shape of the distributions are predetermined by the assumption, the t-test compares only the locations of distribution. So the t-test compares only the locations of distribution represented by means, which is simple and intuitive. So the regarding the aspects like the nature and the specific shape of the distributions. So the t-test compare only the locations of the distributions, compares only the locations of the distribution, which are represented by the means. So which the means will also be simple and intuitive. The t statistic is the ratio of mean difference and standard errors of the mean difference. So the t statistic is the ratio of the mean difference which we find is the mean difference and the standard errors of the mean difference. So the what are the standard errors involved in the mean errors? So it will be divided by the mean difference. So even when there are more groups are compared, more than two groups are compared, some researchers erroneously apply the t-test by implementing multiple t-tests on multiple pairs of mean. So as we have earlier said, when we want to compare more than two or more groups, like three or more groups, so what the possible way we can use using t-test is like we compare, we pair two groups of every time. Every time we apply t-test on that, and another time, next time we'll take another pair of the groups, and then we'll apply the t-test. So we'll apply until the desired result is obtained. But what it is said to be, it is inappropriate but in this using this process, because the repetition of multiple tests may repeatedly add multiple chances of error, so which may result in a larger alpha error level than the preset alpha level. So whatever happening is like whenever we multiply the test that we are going to undergo on our groups, So we increase the level of chances of the errorness. So this errorness should not be there. So how the number of times we increase the test values, the test times, multiple times we test, the level also increases, the error level also increases. So which will result in a larger error value. So when we try to compare means of three groups like A, B, C using the t-test, we implement the three pairwise test like A versus B, B versus C, and then A versus C. So the like three tests will be comparing these three tests. So and then similarly, if the comparisons are repeated k times in an experiment, and the alpha level 0.05 was set for each comparison, and an unexpectedly increased total error of 1 minus 0.95k may be expected for the total comparison procedure in the experiment. So for a comparison of more than two group means the one-way analysis of variance ANOVA, which is ANOVA, is the appropriate method instead of t-test. So we got to rectify this errorness, to this increasing in errorness. So there is a process like one-way analysis of variance, which is called ANOVA, instead of the t-test, which where we have to do multiple times the multiple tests. So as ANOVA is based on the same assumption with the t-test, the interest of ANOVA is on the locations of the distribution represented by the means too. So that's about it. And then why the method is comparing several means, the analysis of variance rather than analysis of means themselves. So we can say that we are comparing the means, various group means, and then we can say that so we can call it like analysis of means, but it is called analysis of variance. So it is because that the relative location of several group means can be more conveniently identified by the variance. We can easily identify the location of them using the variance rather than directly taking the means. So among the group means, they are comparing many group means directly when number of means are large. So like we take a means that is large, so we take the variance instead of the means. So the ANOVA method assesses the relative size of the variance. So the among group means, between the group variance we can say, compared to average variance within the group. So the ANOVA method compares the variances instead of the means. So that's why it is called analysis of variance rather than analysis of means. So what we are going to say at the end is like the main idea of ANOVA is to figure out how much of the total variance comes from variance between the groups and variance within the groups. So based on these two things, the variance between the groups and variance within the groups, so we can find out ANOVA more. We can find out we can do analysis of variance on our groups when we have three or more groups. When we have two groups, we can definitely use the t-test, which is but when we are using on a large scale, when we have more than three or four groups, so the t-test may not be efficient, because the errorness increases as we multiply the tests. So the analysis of variance ANOVA is the best topic. So thank you for listening my lecture. Hope you like that.